He told me, he told Puff, he never mentioned a damn thing to Big. As his label mate, he had an obligation. As a fellow New Yorker, he had an obligation to tell Big. And I don't want to hear about, no, I don't want to snitch, I don't want to rat, I ain't got nothing to do with that.
For nearly 3 decades, the tragedy that struck Christopher Wallace, better known to the world as the Notorious B.I.G., has never stopped haunting hip-hop. The official case files still sit unresolved, but the whispers never quiet. Every year, a new theory, a new claim, another name dragged into the shadows. And now, as the calendar pushes close to 3 full decades since that night in Los Angeles, the silence is broken once again. This time, it's not anonymous detectives or underground bloggers stirring the pot. It's 2 men who were right in the orbit of the chaos, pointing the finger at each other with an intensity that feels more personal than ever. Diddy's former bodyguard Gene Deal and bad boy rapper Mase have cracked open the vault, each accusing the other of betrayal, cowardice, and, most chillingly, of hiding the real truth about Biggie's final night.
Because Mase want to laugh and lie about the situation, let's get into it, bro. I want to get into this. I want to tell you that Mase had a duty and an obligation.
We've heard endless speculation about the shooters and the black Chevy Impala, about rival labels, West Coast retaliation, and corrupt police officers. But when Gene Deal went public with his latest revelation, the script flipped hard. He didn't point to faceless gangs or nameless street soldiers. He said the betrayal came from within. Deal now claims that the bullets that ripped through Biggie's car were meant for Diddy, and that the man who orchestrated it wasn't a rival from death row, but someone sitting on the very same label, Mase. According to Deal, what the world has believed for decades is only the surface of a darker betrayal. He insists Mase had a motive rooted in money, a grudge over contracts he believed were predatory, and that this grudge was strong enough to push him toward the ultimate act of disloyalty. It's a story that feels almost too wild to process. We remember Mase as the golden boy of Bad Boy Records, the smooth-talking Harlem rapper who gave us hits alongside Diddy and Biggie, the man who helped deliver the anthem Mo Money, Mo Problems. But Deal's version paints a very different picture. In his retelling, Mase wasn't a trusted teammate grieving the loss of a label mate. Instead, he was an insider turned adversary, a man who allegedly wanted Diddy out of the way and saw Biggie caught in the crossfire. Gene insists that the night of the shooting, the real target was Diddy himself, and Biggie became a victim of proximity. If true, it doesn't just rewrite the history of hip-hop's most infamous tragedy, it demolishes the mythology we've been sold for almost 30 years.
All those things, bro, it's crazy to me that these guys will be continuously always bringing that up when, 1, they're not telling the truth, 2, they're not naming names, and 3, and speaking of Mase, played a big part in the whole situation.
Gene Deal has been telling pieces of this story for years, but this latest claim hit like a grenade. Back in earlier interviews, he had pointed at Nation of Islam members, at LA street gangs, even at the possibility of corrupt officers helping to stage the hit. But this time, he said Mase was the one who needed to answer for it. And what makes his accusation sting harder is the fact that when Biggie was taken from us in March of 1997, Deal was one of the few people considered by investigators as a credible witness. He wasn't just another hanger-on. He was interviewed by both the LAPD and the FBI, and his testimony still sits in official case files. Which raises the unsettling question. If he's credible, what do we do with this version of events? Of course, Mase didn't let this bombshell hang in the air. He fired back, fast and furious. The rapper called into Gene's show directly, his voice laced with anger, and tore into the accusations. According to him, this wasn't truth, it was deflection. Mase shot back that Deal himself was the one who failed that night, the man whose job was to protect Biggie, but who froze under pressure. He called Gene a coward, accused him of smearing others to mask his own negligence, and dared him to own the reality of his failures. What started as an interview quickly spiraled into a shouting match, the 2 men yelling over each other, trading curses and accusations, until Mase finally hung up the line. Even after Mase was gone, Gene kept hurling words into the void, as if his enemy might still be listening.
I heard some things and I saw some things that was disturbing to me. That somebody sent me the video, I looked at it, and it was Cam and Mase, and here they go laughing again about the security the night Big lost his life, which was disturbing to me, bro.
The intensity of their feud forces us to ask who stands to gain by reshaping this story now. Gene Deal has spent years telling his side of the tale, often painting himself as the loyal soldier betrayed by the very machine he served. He's admitted openly that Diddy fired him when he realized he was talking to authorities. Since then, Deal has made a second career out of exposing what he claims are the hidden truths of the bad boy era. His words sting because they come from someone who is inside the circle, someone who sat in the cars, who knew the movements of the entourage, who saw the fear and the chaos up close. But Mase, too, carries scars from those years. He's spoken at length about being abandoned in LA the very night Biggie was shot, trapped in a hotel room while 70 Bloods prowled the hallways. He claims he had to be rescued by Gene himself, though Deal disputes even that, calling it another fabrication. The contradictions only make the mystery more twisted. If Mase was really cornered in a hotel room, hunted down by enemies, then why does Gene insist he wasn't even there? And if Gene truly knew the bullets were meant for Diddy, why didn't he stop the convoy that night when the cars rolled toward Fairfax and Wilshire? Each man's story chips away at the other's credibility, leaving us to wonder if either is telling the whole truth. The only certainty is that the feud has reignited an old fire, forcing us to revisit details many had buried deep. We're reminded that Biggie wasn't just a superstar. He was a young man caught between forces much bigger than himself, and those forces are still battling over his memory decades later.
Mase came back from that game. He let me know, and he let Puff know that he was good. They wanted Puff and Big dead.
What makes this all the more poignant is the timing. Just weeks ago, Biggie's mother, Violetta Wallace, passed away at 72. At her funeral, Mase was seen among the mourners, sitting quietly, reflecting on what he called the end of an era. He even mentioned sitting near one of Diddy's sons, glancing his way, not sure whether to say hello. He claimed he'd still visit Diddy in prison if given the chance, saying, "These are the times when you need people to check up and make sure you're good." That softer side, the respectful mourner, stands in stark contrast to the fiery voice screaming at Gene Deal on the phone, defending himself against accusations of betrayal. It's a split image that leaves fans torn. Who is the real Mase in this story?
Gene, here go Miss Wallace.
Gene Deal.
Hey, Miss Wallace, Gene Deal.
Oh, hi, Gene. How are you?
All right, man. You know I ain't seen you since I came to your house and had that conversation with you. How you been? You all right?
I've been okay. I've been watching you on Facebook.
Gene, meanwhile, hasn't softened. In interviews, he's only doubled down, describing how the music industry twisted Diddy into what he calls a monster, suggesting that the mogul learned his ruthless habits from mentors like Russell Simmons, Clive Davis, and Andre Harrell. He insists that the night of Biggie's passing wasn't just tragic, it was predictable. He claims he warned Diddy not to go to the party, that he literally told him someone was going to be taken out that night. "My man, don't go to this party, one of y'all going to fall," he recalls saying. And yet, they went, and Biggie never came home. Whether those warnings were real or retrofitted into the narrative, they add a sense of chilling inevitability to the timeline. It's the kind of hindsight that gnaws at the edges of the story, making us question who knew what and when.
Mase had a duty as a label mate to tell Chris, these dudes want you dead.
The back and forth doesn't stop there. Gene has gone as far as accusing Mase of failing a basic obligation as a label mate, warning Biggie that there were threats against his life. He claims that Crips openly declared they wanted both Diddy and Biggie gone, and that while Mase mentioned this to Diddy and Gene, he never told Biggie directly. Deal sees this as evidence of envy, of Mase keeping quiet because he wanted the #1 spot at Bad Boy. He paints Mase as a man willing to watch his label mate walk into danger for his own benefit. Mase, of course, denies this outright, saying Gene is inventing stories to tarnish his name. But the accusation lingers, and in a feud this raw, even the hint of envy feels like gasoline poured on the fire.
I'm gonna get down to it like this, bro. My grandfather once told me back in the day, yo, if a brick hits you, say ouch. And I had to look at that in a way, whereas that, you know, if somebody is not saying anything directly to you, or you know they not talking about you, you shouldn't have something to say.
We can't ignore that Gene has also twisted the knife deeper by sharing stories about Biggie himself. He once claimed that Big didn't really like Mase as an artist, that he thought Cameron was the real talent from Harlem. According to Deal, Biggie openly said he preferred Cameron, laughed at Mase for dropping the murder from his stage name, and even mocked him behind the scenes. If that's true, then Mase wasn't just fighting with Diddy over contracts, he might have felt overshadowed by the very man whose success made the label shine. Imagine carrying that kind of tension, walking into studios knowing your own label mate doubted you, and then being accused decades later of orchestrating his demise. It's enough to make even the most loyal fan wonder how deep those resentments really ran. The feud between Gene Deal and Mase isn't just about pointing fingers. It's about rewriting the narrative of hip-hop's most painful mystery. With each accusation, the story shifts from LA gangs to corrupt cops to Diddy himself and now to Mase. Every twist leaves us questioning what we thought we knew, and every denial only sharpens the tension. And as their words keep circling back to that fateful night in 1997, we're reminded that the wounds of Biggie's loss have never healed. They've only scabbed over, waiting for moments like this to be ripped open again.
Without that. And then us coming up, 50 and everybody, what you made think they get bulletproof trucks for?
As shocking as Gene Deal's accusations against Mase might be, they almost pale when we place the spotlight on the one figure who looms over this entire saga, Diddy himself. For years, whispers have swirled that the mogul knew more than he ever admitted, that his empire was built not just on talent and ambition, but on decisions made in the shadows. Deal has painted a haunting picture of those final days, claiming that Diddy's mood shifted into something erratic and restless, as though he could sense something approaching. He alleges that while Biggie wanted to fly overseas, Diddy was adamant, almost obsessive, that his star artist attend the party that would later become the scene of tragedy. Why insist so strongly? Why put Biggie in harm's way if the tension in Los Angeles was already sky high? That single decision gnaws at the edges of the story like a loose thread, daring us to pull harder and see what unravels.
I knew that somebody was going to die that night. Somebody was going to get shot.
Deal has gone further, suggesting that the mogul wasn't just anxious, but manipulative, maneuvering people like chess pieces. In one interview, he recalled warning him, saying, "Yo, Puff, I got some intel. If we go to this party tonight, one of us gonna get taken out." According to Deal, Diddy brushed it off and pressed forward anyway. That kind of detail forces us to question the balance of power. Did Diddy truly believe he was untouchable, or did he know something about how the night would play out? The questions linger with a weight that's hard to shake, and they make the already fractured timeline even murkier. It's not just about Mase or street gangs. It's about a mogul who may have gambled with lives to protect his own throne. And while we wrestle with that possibility, another theory grows louder: the involvement of Suge Knight and his network of connections on the West Coast. Industry insiders have long believed that Suge orchestrated retaliation from behind bars, sending signals through intermediaries who moved freely between the streets and the prison gates. Reports claim he used visitors to pass messages, instructing a known associate named Poochie to handle the job for a price. If true, that puts Biggie's demise not just in the hands of rivals, but within a carefully coordinated structure designed to look like random chaos. And then we add the detail that certain LAPD officers, later exposed in the Rampart scandal, were allegedly moonlighting as bodyguards for Suge's death row camp. Suddenly, the crime scene feels less like a drive-by and more like a scripted play, in which the outcome was decided long before the cars ever stopped at that red light.
My whole thing is, Big got because he wasn't supposed to be in LA. That's just my opinion.
But it was probably some gang shit, right?
The whispers about double crosses only thicken the fog. Sources have long suggested that the very people hired to protect Bad Boy's circle, the Crips, were also running side deals with Death Row. If Biggie's entourage thought they were buying security, were they in fact paying men who were working both ends of the feud? It's a chilling possibility, one that reframes the entire night. Instead of being shielded, the East Coast crew may have been walking straight into a trap, lulled into a false sense of safety by guards who were already compromised. For a global star like Biggie, that's more than negligence. It's betrayal hiding in plain sight. And it leaves us staring at the uncomfortable truth. If your protectors can't be trusted, then who really benefits when the smoke clears? Let's not forget that official investigations have repeatedly pointed toward murky ties between the shooters and insiders with badges. FBI agent Phil Carson once claimed he had evidence that the LAPD itself was compromised, that certain officers knew who pulled the trigger but buried it under layers of silence. He even named Amir Mohammed, the godparent of an officer's children, as the likely triggerman. The details read like the plot of a conspiracy thriller, but they're drawn from sworn reports, not fiction. Put that next to Gene Deal's recollections of Diddy's unusual behavior and Suge Knight's long shadow, and we're left with an unsettling mosaic where everyone seems guilty in some way, yet no one is officially held accountable.
Because she was, I think, understanding clearly what had happened, and I think she was starting to see that other people were responsible, than who she previously had believed.
Even decades later, Deal speaks with visible pain about that night, recalling the frantic rush to Cedars-Sinai, the desperate hope that Biggie might somehow survive, and the crushing moment when reality hit. He has described Diddy crying out for prayers, collapsing into disbelief, while he himself snapped back that there was nothing left to pray for. The words are sharp, almost cruel, but they underline just how broken the trust had become between men who once rode together at the height of success. Whether you believe Deal's story or not, his bitterness is undeniable, and it gives weight to the idea that what happened in March of 1997 wasn't just the loss of a star, it was the implosion of an empire. All of this leaves us staring into the abyss of unanswered questions. Did Diddy knowingly push Biggie into danger to shield himself? Did Suge Knight's reach from behind bars extend further than anyone wanted to admit? Were the Crips merely opportunists playing both sides? Or were they executing a plan drawn up by someone with far more power? And perhaps most unsettling of all, did law enforcement allow the truth to be buried to protect its own? Each theory contradicts the next, yet each holds just enough credibility to demand attention. That's the cruel irony of this mystery. The closer we get to the center, the darker and more tangled it becomes.
The reason I'm speaking on this, and you allow me to speak on this on your platform, is that because when people hear something about bad boy security, especially in the 90s and the early 2000s, it was either Big Gene, Wolf, Paul. They had people that was behind the scenes.
And so we circle back to the present, where Gene Deal and Mase sling accusations across airwaves, each trying to control the narrative, each accusing the other of betrayal. It feels like a proxy war for something much bigger, a fight to define what legacy remains, because beneath all the gossip, all the rumors, all the explosive claims, there's still the image of a young man from Brooklyn who changed music forever, and whose story ended at 24. The question that lingers is whether we'll ever get the full truth, or whether the secrets of that night will remain buried under layers of ego, power, and silence. As this feud grows uglier and more personal, one thing is undeniable. The truth about Biggie's final night is more complicated, more sinister, and more heartbreaking than anyone imagined. Was he taken out by a rival, betrayed by insiders, or sacrificed for the survival of a business empire? Or is the real story still locked away in files and memories, too dangerous to surface? We want to know what you think. Drop your theories in the comments. Until then, stay sharp, stay questioning, and remember, sometimes the biggest legends are surrounded by the darkest shadows. Goodbye for now, and we'll be watching the story unfold together.